Hello everyone, my name is Eddie Bolen. I'm the pastor at Edgewater United Methodist Church, and I'm also the pastor at Midway United Methodist Church. I want to thank you so much for taking some time and for watching this video. This video is part of a series that is called Life-Changing Relationships. This is actually the third. If you'd like to check out some of the other ones, you can look at some of the earlier videos, but today we're going to be talking about life-changing relationships, thriving in change. And I think that is certainly a message that all of us need to embrace in our hearts and embrace in our minds. And thriving in change, specifically, how can we live a brand new life? Something that we've had to do together as churches and as congregations. We will be meeting this Sunday, and you're invited. We'll be meeting for in-person worship in the sanctuary at Edgewater at 9:20 a.m. We'll be meeting for worship in the sanctuary at Midway at 10:45 a.m. And again, thriving in change. You'll be required before you come to sort of check your temperature, check how you're feeling. If you feel sick, if you feel ill, especially if you have a temperature, do not come and do not join us for worship on that day. If you find that you're feeling well, if you're feeling up to it, free from a fever, then come and join us. You'll be required to wear a face mask. Another part of change, you'll be required to wear a face mask. You'll be required to keep it on the entire time you're at the church or around the church. You'll also be required to keep 6 feet of social distancing away from the people that you do not live in the same household with. Also, you'll notice that the offering plate, some of the other contact services that we have, we're taking extra precaution to make sure that you are safe and make sure that you are healthy. We'll not be passing the offering plate. We'll not be passing out a lot of materials as we might normally do when we come together and when we worship together. But I do hope that you can come if you're feeling well, if you're feeling up to it. 9:20 a.m. at Edgewater, 10:45 at Midway. Well, what does it mean to thrive in change? How do we do this? How can we possibly thrive in change? I want you to do this, and it may seem a little difficult at first, but I want you to imagine that you have been caught. And how do you get over being caught and maybe doing something that was really kind of embarrassing? Getting caught doing something, whether it's embarrassing or not, well, does it make you nervous just thinking about it? Just imagine that somebody has caught you doing something that you didn't want them to see. Well, getting caught, whether it's embarrassing or not embarrassing, it can ruin your day. In fact, getting caught doing something, it can run your week, it can run your month, it can stay with you for years, and even getting caught in the act of doing something embarrassing, well, that has the potential to ruin your whole life. And so I want you to do something right now. I want you to imagine that you have been caught. Imagine that you have been caught in one of the most embarrassing moments of your life. Like I said, it's not easy to think about. It's not easy for me to think about. And then think that not only have you been caught in one of the most embarrassing moments of your life, but now, because you have been caught, you are now told to go in front of an audience. And give me a minute, I'm just going to shift the chair just a little bit. But you are told that you are to go in front of an audience, and you are to sit in front of that audience, and then someone comes up to you and they hand you a microphone, and you're to sit down and you're to speak into that microphone, and you are to describe the most embarrassing moment of your life, the very thing that you were just caught in the act doing. And now I want you to imagine that as you are sitting there speaking into the microphone, as you are sitting there and as the audience is listening to you and also making eye contact with you. Now imagine what that would be like to describe in just moments ago the very most embarrassing moment of your life. And now you're describing it. And then think about what it would feel like for everyone's eyes to look at you. For the eyes of everyone to be just fixed on you, not breaking eye contact, except for a few moments. And then you start to see people that as their eyes break away, they start to look down at the ground. And as they are looking at the ground, as they are looking toward the ground, they begin to look at all the rocks. They begin to look at all the stones. And again, forgive me for the shift. But they begin to look at all the rocks and the stones that are on the ground. And they begin to see them and even start to pick one up. Start to reach out their hands and start to grab them. And the only reason that they are doing this is with the intent of throwing them at your body. And now imagine a little bit more. Imagine that they have not just decided that this is something that they've got to do. Not that this is what the civil law has told them that they should do, is that as you have been called in this moment, as you are describing your most embarrassing moment, but now imagine that they are gathering these rocks, this audience, the ones that you are addressing, the ones that you are telling that very embarrassing moment that you were caught doing. Imagine that they are gathering these stones to throw at your body because they have a religious text that tells them that if you were caught doing what you were caught doing only moments ago, that you should be killed with rocks just like this. Now you can take a break. And you can come off of the seats. You can come off of that embarrassing moment. You can come off of that place. No more imagining. But now you can turn to your Bible, to your religious text. The Bible that has both the Old Testament and the New Testament. And if you go from the Old Testament, if you go into the New Testament, and you may know Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, the Gospels, 4 stories that tell us the life of Jesus from his birth all the way to his death and resurrection, you will find in John chapter 8, you can begin to read. No more imagining, but in John chapter 8, starting with verse 1, continuing through verse 11, you will find a story where a woman is caught in the act of adultery. And she is brought into the temple. She is brought into the temple. And her embarrassing story is told, well, it's not told by her, although she is the center of the conversation, she is the center of attention, but it is told by some leaders, some religious leaders who know this text, who know this temple. They have brought her into this temple. They have brought her to church that day, invited her to church that day to describe her embarrassing moment that she was called in just moments ago. And the leaders, as they began to tell this story of what she was caught doing, being called in the very act of adultery, as the leaders begin to tell this story, they look a little bit beyond her who is sitting here, and they begin to look toward a guest preacher that is in the temple for the day, a guest preacher that is over to the side. His name is Jesus. And they say to Jesus, this guest for the day, they say, Jesus, we caught this woman in the very act of adultery. And you know our religious text. You know the law of Moses. It says this. And in fact, in the Hebrew scriptures, in the Old Testament, in our religious text, it says in Leviticus chapter 20, verse 10, if a man commits adultery with the wife of his neighbor, both the adulterer and the adulteress shall be put to death. Leviticus 20, verse 10. Again, in the law of Moses, our Old Testament, your Old Testament, Deuteronomy 22, 23 and 24. If there is a young woman, a virgin who is already engaged to be married, and a man meets her in the town and lies with her, you shall bring both of them to the gate of the town and stone them to death. The young woman because she did not cry for help in the town, and the man because he violated his neighbor's wife. So you shall purge the evil from your midst. And the leaders, pointing past the woman, they then look to Jesus, they look over to Jesus and they ask Jesus, they say, Jesus, what do you say? Jesus doesn't say anything. Jesus does something. He's silent, doesn't say anything, but he does something. He bends down on the ground. And you know, one of the things that I've learned about from people who are police officers, they've told me this, that police officers are trained in these techniques of de-escalation. That if there is a conflict, if there is a tension, people are mad, if they're angry, you know, if they're moving toward violence, that just having someone just sit down, having someone bend down, have someone get lower, that it can de-escalate what is happening. And Jesus does this. They say, Jesus, what do you say? And he bends down, and then he does this. Into some sand, he begins to write something. We don't know what it is. John never really tells us what he's writing in the sand, but he bends down and he writes in the sand. And they then start to ask Jesus again, what do you say? The guest teacher who is here in the temple on that day, what do you say? And then Jesus speaks. John chapter 8, verse 7. He says, let's have the man who has never had a sinful desire throw the first stone at her. Again, John 8, verse 7. And then he bends down again. Now, you ever been caught doing something, maybe something that really wasn't, it was just dumb. You ever been caught doing something that was kind of silly, as dumb as it was, as silly as it was, and then you have someone that comes next to you and they just, you know, they make you feel better. You know, it may be dumb and it may be silly, but all of a sudden you're taking it, you know, kind of hard, and it's almost like it's just this darkness that covers you. And then when you have someone, maybe it's a friend, maybe it's even a complete stranger, maybe it's someone that you love, someone that you care about, and they come and they stand next to you, and then it just feels like all of a sudden there's a light that has went off. You know, that all of a sudden, that as dark as you were feeling, just their very presence, it makes you feel better in that moment and in that situation. This is what Jesus does. Jesus, again, he says, let's have the man who has never had a sinful desire throw the first stone at her. And then Jesus just bends down, doesn't say anything, nor does he look. But all of a sudden, what begins to happen is that everyone that has picked up a stone, everyone that does have a stone in their hand, they have looked to the ground for those stones, all of a sudden they begin to leave. And then Jesus begins to straighten back up. Jesus begins to stand back up. And he asks the woman who is there at the center, he says, where are your accusers? And this is the very first time that we get to hear her actually speak. She says, I see no one, Lord. The only words that we have from her up to this point. And then Jesus turns to her when she says, I see no one, Lord. He says, go from now on. And one of those things about us as human beings, one of the things that's true for her as well as true for you as well as me, is that it's really easy to get caught up in the pull of our past behavior. And those embarrassing moments that we've been caught in, those embarrassing, even as dumb and silly as they may be, it's easy to get caught up in the pull of that past. As painful and embarrassing as it may be, as upsetting as our past lives may be to us personally, it's real easy to get pulled back in our past behaviors and in our past lives. But Jesus, he calls her to go forward. The words of grace that Jesus speaks into her life as everyone else has left. He says, certainly, I don't condemn you either. Go, and from now on, looking forward into the future, be free from a life of sin. Jesus calls her to the life that is in front of her, the life that is ahead of her, not the life that she is living right now in this moment. Not even the life that she has lived in the past, But Jesus calls her to go forward and to change her life. And to even, not only does he call her to go forward and to change her life, but he has created an environment so that she can begin to thrive in that change. And it's the same with us. It's the same with you. This is what Jesus has called you to go and to sin no more. And what is extraordinary about this story in the Gospel of John is that Jesus in real time, we get to see. Because Jesus in real time has shown her how she can thrive and change. He has removed the obstacles, the stones in front of her, the very real threats to her life and to her existence. And by removing those obstacles, she can go and sin no more. She can go and sin no more. And imagine that. Just imagine that. The obstacles. Imagine the kind of life-changing relationships that we can have with people as obstacles are removed, so that the people that we know, the people that we love, the people that we care about, so that they can go and sin no more. Imagine creating teams of people. Imagine bringing people together who are filled, with the Spirit of Jesus Christ. Imagine bringing people together who are doing what Jesus has done, who are equipped and empowered to identify obstacles and to then remove them for the purpose that other people may be enabled to go and to sin no more. Well, how do we know that she is able to leave from this moment with all of her accusers gone? How do we know that she is able to leave and to begin to change her life and thrive in that changing life to go and sin no more? Well, we know this because we find a promise that Jesus gives not only to her, but that Jesus gives to every single one of us. Because immediately following this story in John chapter 8, verse 12, that immediately following this story, this is what Jesus himself says. I am the light of the world, and those who embrace me will experience life-giving light, and they will never walk in darkness. Why did she experience a life-giving relationship with Jesus? Because Jesus is the light of the world. And she is able to go and sin no more because she is able to live with Jesus as the light of the world and the very center of her life. Now, why does she thrive in the changes of her new life? A life of going and sinning no more. Well, she is going to thrive in that change because Jesus has eliminated the obstacles that will enable her to go and sin no more. Jesus knelt beside her, and then Jesus stood with her. Jesus wrote in the ground, de-escalating her opponents, in fact, disarming her accusers, and even offered these words, let the one who is without a sinful desire throw the first stone. He also enabled her to experience the life-giving life that comes from Jesus, who is the light of the entire world. You see, her entire life is going to change from this moment because the obstacles that were keeping her from living a life that was free from sin, the obstacles that were keeping her from living a life with Jesus Christ, has now been eliminated, and she is empowered to thrive in that change. Imagine a ministry as part of the church. Imagine a ministry of folks who are coming together, identifying obstacles to living the light of Jesus Christ. Imagine a ministry of removing obstacles like a rock or a stone so that the light of Christ could be embraced by more and more people. Imagine a ministry of thriving with change in new life. Imagine what it would look like if we embraced the light of Jesus Christ that has come to us and we were able to thrive in this changing world that we find ourselves a part of. I know I need it. I know my family needs it. I know for us that as we consider and as we imagine our youngest children as they begin to return to school and as we encounter all the changes that are coming with that, changes that seem to be coming, well, it seems sometimes like on a daily, even hourly basis. What is school going to look like? What is before school going to look like? What is after school going to look like? Is it going to be virtual? Is it going to be in the classroom? If it is in the classroom, who else is in the classroom? What are the precautions that are being taken in that classroom? What is transportation going to look like? Yeah, I think this is a message that all of us need to embrace. Is that how can every single one of us begin to thrive and change? Well, here's some homework for you. And I hope that it is empowering to you. And it's really simple. It is homework with a few questions. What are we going to do with the rocks that we're holding? Because all of us we're all part of that sinful nature. We all have those rocks that we are very quick to pick up. Those rocks that we are very quick to hold tight in our hands. And so what are we going to do with those rocks? What are we going to do? Imagine this, and just one more time. What are we going to write in the sand? In the sand, whether we're writing it out, whether it's printed like this, or whether we are writing it electronic. What are we writing out there? And then who will experience the life-giving light of Jesus Christ? Who will begin to experience that? Jesus took away every obstacle so one person could go and sin no more. What will you do? That's the homework that I have for you, is to ask yourself, what will you do? Because when only one person, just as it happened with Jesus and this woman who had been caught in the act, that with only one person, when only one person changes to experience Jesus as the light giving life in their life, they will never walk in darkness. And that is truly a life-giving relationship. And I do pray that you are able to thrive in the changes that you find in your life as Jesus comes to you as light. Remember that in Jesus there is light. Darkness is eliminated. And so I do hope that part of your thriving and change is to embrace the light of Jesus Christ. And I also pray that this is a moment that finds you healthy, finds you safe, and pray that you together, as well as your whole family, that you may begin to thrive and change. May God's blessings be with you for now, forevermore. Let us together walk and live in peace. Amen.